Mr. Colin Herbert Alter is being interviewed on February 19th, 2019 as part of the Veterans History Project, a project of the American Folklife Center of the Library of Congress. The volunteers for this important project are Dr. Naomi Dornfeld-Platt, interviewer, Ms. Debbie Shankman, videographer, and Mr. Krishna Manohar, technician. Mr. Alter was drafted into the United States Army, Company D, 1st Battalion, 3rd Brigade during the Vietnam War, and was stationed in the United States Army Training Center at Fort Dix, New Jersey. Hildy Schulman and Colin Alter have been married for 38 years and have 7 children and 22 grandchildren. Mr. Alter's advice to future generations is, quote, "Take advantage of every opportunity given to you. Learn how much living in the United States has given you and appreciate the advantages of being an American citizen," unquote. Okay, now we will start at the very beginning and ask you when and where you were born and your parents, their occupation, siblings.
I was born on July 28th, 1944 in Toronto, Canada. My parents emigrated to the United States in March 1951. Went to school in Rochester, New York, and after graduating from high school at Monroe High School in Rochester, I went to the University of Minnesota in Minneapolis, where it is very cold. Didn't necessarily have a very good financial plan for going off to college. Ran out of money and, while working, got drafted.
What year was this?
I was drafted on August 8th, 1966. What was interesting about that date was I was very active as a student in politics in Minnesota. And I came to know one of our congressmen very, very well, Herbert H. Quie, Quie. Mr. Quie decided to hire me as a summer intern here in Washington. And that was for the summer of 1966. The same day that I got my draft notice, I also received another letter, somewhat similarly formatted, that said, "Greetings from the President," cordially inviting me to a reception in the Rose Garden of the White House.
And who was president then?
Lyndon Johnson. So I had 2 letters from Lyndon Johnson. They invited me to 2 different events on the exact same day. The Rose Garden and reporting to the courthouse in Rochester, New York for induction. I wanted to go to the Rose Garden reception. I didn't make it. It was suggested I really, really had to go to induction into the military instead.
Did you write the president a note saying sorry, but?
No, I did not. Would have been a good idea, but no, I did not.
And what was in Rochester? Boot camp? Basic training?
No, Rochester was my permanent home. My parents operated a grocery store in what we would now call the inner city. We also lived in the inner city. And I lived in Rochester until I was 18, and then went away to college and the Army and finished college, and then returned to Rochester for an interesting job in public transportation.
You just went through about 20 years, right? Let's just go back again. So you were drafted.
Yeah. So got sent to Fort Dix for induction and all the rest of it.
What's
For-
the rest of it?
Well, you get your shots. You go through basic training, and for reasons I do not understand to this day, the normal time in reception station was about 3 or 4 days, and I was in reception station about 2 weeks.
Why is that?
I do not know. I have a theory, but I do not know. Got sent to a basic training unit at Fort Dix. My commanding officer was a little bit younger than me, and he viewed himself as God's gift to the military, knowing everything that there was to know about the military and military history. He tried to intimidate me, but I really didn't understand that that was part of the game that they were trying to do.
How old were you at this time in basic?
22. So it was very hard to intimidate me. Instead, we sort of reversed the process. When I said, how could I obey the rules of the Uniform Code of Military Justice without knowing what the Code of Military Justice was? They said what they would provide me with a copy, and he got in my face and said, "Are you some sort of legal eagle?" I said, "No, sir." "Well, what was your last civilian job?" Well, I had to be honest. My last civilian job, sir, was a congressional aide, sir. That caused him to pause a little bit. We weren't supposed to read in line, of course. This is discipline, after all. And I got a letter.
From?
Well, I opened my letter. It was from a good friend. And I was reading it, and he came along and he snatched it out of my hands. And then, after he saw the letterhead, he sort of shook his hands and gave it back to me like that.
That's not a good beginning.
No, it was not. The letterhead was from the United States Congress, House of Representatives. And at the bottom, the signature block was, "Your friend, the Honorable Albert H. Quee, Jr." But instead of it being written out by the robot pen, it was Al. And instead of Mr. Alter, it was Colin. And that shook him up a little bit.
But you're still in basic training and he's
I was
still
still-
above you. So,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
then what happened?
Well, he said, maybe he was kidding. "Why don't you mention me in your next letter to your friend?" I took that as an order. A good friend of mine, who later was a congressman, was in the Minnesota House of Representatives, whose letterhead was almost identical to that of a congressman. So I asked him to do me a favor. And he said, "Sure." A few weeks later, got a piece of mail. I said, "Lieutenant, sir, I obeyed your orders." And he said, quite loudly, "Well, that's a first. No, I want you to read a letter." And it started out, "Dear Colin," and gave me some of the news and views of what was happening in the Minnesota legislature. "And be sure to tell Lieutenant so-and-so that I'm really interested in what you're doing, and say hello to Sergeant Brown for me." Then I had the signature block, and sincerely yours, Bill.
Was that enough to satisfy him or made him angrier?
Oh, it really shook him up. Did not quite know what to do with me.
And then what did he do with you?
As little as possible.
But you were still in basic training.
Still in basic training.
Okay, so how long did that last?
8 weeks. There was one other incident in basic that I thought was a real charge. We were out in the field and dressed. It was still rather warm. I'm wearing a steel hat, carrying an M14, a backpack, and the orderly room was not air conditioned. He called me into the orderly room and read me instructions regarding a security clearance. And the rules and regulations regarding a security clearance. Among the rules were that no one is allowed to ask me, why do I have this security clearance? And no one's allowed to pressure me about information regarding my security clearance, which he then proceeded to do. And
Could you tell us now why you had security clearance?
I still have no clue. So I went to the position of attention, stood straight, and I said, "Sir, I request permission to see either the brigade commander or the inspector general on post, as you just told me I have the right to do, because you are pressuring me, which is against the rules. And you just signed a document." He tried to cool things down a little bit, and he said, "But Alter, your security clearance is much higher than mine. Why do you need it?" "Sir, I renew my request to see the brigade commander." Whereupon he kicked me out of the office and went back doing what I was supposed to be doing. And to this day, I still have no clue why I had a very high security clearance at that time.
And what else happened in boot camp? Did you get advanced training or anything like that?
They sent me to combat support training to be a supply clerk. I applied for officers candidate school. They kept me at Fort Dix. They lost my paperwork.
How long were you supposed to have been there originally? The basic training.
8 weeks for basic and 6 weeks for advanced training.
And how long were you there?
Well, 8 weeks for basic, and instead of 3 days for reception station, 2 weeks, and 6 weeks for support training. But I was in that unit for about 4 months while waiting to go to OCS. And when they finally found my paperwork, I only had 14 months to go or 15 months to go, and I didn't want to start the clock running again. So I said, I changed my mind.
You didn't go to officer cadet school?
No.
Candidate school?
No. So I stayed at Fort Dix.
Doing what?
And that's when I got transferred to 1st Battalion of 3rd Brigade to be a clerk. And since they already had a supply clerk, they made me a company clerk. And I stayed there the rest of my time at Dix.
And what did you do? Typing mostly?
Yes.
At that time, were computers being used? And did you know them?
No.
Typewriters?
No. No, they told me how to type at least 15 words per minute. And being the well-behaved young man that I was, I said, "Is that left hand or right hand?" And they didn't like my answer.
I could see that. That's a smart aleck answer.
Yeah. So they kept me in one company for a few months to learn the duties of the company clerk. And once again, I had a very young officer who had not necessarily listened carefully when he was a student in OCS. We had a reserve unit stationed in our barracks. They didn't need me for all the normal activities of a company clerk, so they assigned me to something that was called the 1st Army Reserve Evaluation Team, where I was being a clerk for some high-ranking officers out of Fort Meade. It was interesting work. It was just for 2 weeks. On what was supposed to be our last day, I got called back to the company and told, make sure you're back here in the company at 8 o'clock Monday morning. And if you're not, you're AWOL. All right, no problem. That was a Saturday morning. Saturday afternoon, the officer in charge of our unit said, we're not done yet. So everybody in the room has to be here at 7 o'clock Monday morning. And we'll try to finish by lunch. Monday came. The last order I had was from a bird colonel, a colonel with a full colonel. And that was to be somewhere different than my normal location. So I followed the orders of the colonel. We got called that I was missing. And the colonel was most unhappy. So he said, go take care of whatever they want you, but they can come back immediately. And they want to give you an Article 15, that's non-judicial punishment for being AWOL. Just refuse it and ask for a court-martial, and that should shut him up. It didn't.
No, court-martial's a
Serious.
big deal.
It's a very big
Why
deal.
would you do?
Bad advice.
And that goes on your records.
Of course it
You'll be
does.
dishonorably discharged.
If you're convicted.
Yes.
If you're convicted.
You're taking a chance.
So I reported back to the colonel, and he thought it was absolutely hilarious. He asked me if the young lieutenant, second lieutenant, even bothered to ask me why I wasn't where I was supposed to be. No, sir. Did he call me? And then he said, no, he did not call me. And then the colonel explained that I was following his orders, and last he heard, a colonel outranks a second lieutenant. He told me not to worry about it, but to insist upon a court-martial. And make sure it's a special court-martial, which is a real one.
Was this still at Fort Dix?
Absolutely. So, who types up the court-martial papers?
You.
Right. So I had to type up my own court-martial papers. And I also had to find a defense attorney.
On your own, you have to find one?
Yeah,
a
of course.
military defense attorney
Or anybody I
not?
wanted. So I chose the battalion clerk. He had finished law school, but he was drafted before he had taken the bar exam. So he was going to be my defense attorney. It took me the rest of the week to type out the paperwork. And I took it across this, I got it signed by the lieutenant, took it across the street to battalion headquarters. The battalion clerk had a smile that went from ear to ear. I should have figured something was going on. The sergeant major at the battalion, he asked me what it was, and I told him, and he got a smile that went from ear to ear. And he said, I'll take it in. Why don't you stand over there so you can hear what happens? Yes, Sergeant Major. And he took it in and said in a rather loud voice, here's the court-martial papers on PFC Alter from Lieutenant so-and-so. The battalion commanding officer was a lieutenant colonel. And he had the kind of voice that you could hear across the parade ground.
Weren't you nervous during all this?
No.
going on?
Not really. If there's going to be a court-martial, let it occur. So he bellowed, get Lieutenant over here now. And 5 minutes from now is too late. The sergeant major came out and said, you better go back to the orderly room And just be prepared. He said all this with a smile on his face. Well, what happened was that there was 2 piles of paper on the desk of the lieutenant colonel. One pile was the court-martial papers. 2 charges of AWOL, disrespect to a commanding officer, disrespect to a senior non-com. And that was one pile. And the other pile was a letter of commendation from a lieutenant general at Fort Meade through my entire chain of command. And everybody putting an endorsement on it, appreciating my work with the 1st Army Review Team. The lieutenant, my company commander, was asked which took precedence, court-martial from a 2nd lieutenant or a letter of commendation for the exact same activities from a lieutenant general. My 2nd lieutenant gave the incorrect answer. So I was moved 2 hours later to Company D, and he was moved to Vietnam a month later.
During a war. And then what happened at Fort Dix for you? I mean, what did you do?
They had sent me to a high-performing company. We had lots and lots of paperwork for awards. The turnover rate was high because it was the end of a 2-year period for most of the people in that company.
Excuse me, this was 1967, something like that?
Yeah, 67, 68.
And you were not using computers?
No.
You were using just regular
Typewriters.
typewriters in the service?
And were they electrical typewriters?
Oh, heck no, of course
No,
not.
that's what I was wondering.
You still had to go bang with the carriage?
Yeah, I had,
Excuse me, carbon copies, you were still using carbon paper?
of course.
And whiteout?
No,
No, just...
whiteout was not available, no, just carbon.
So you had to erase each page to, if you made a mistake?
If you made more than 2 errors, you start over again.
Okay. Come on, continue.
The typewriter that I had one of those very large carriages, the legal size carriages, rather than letter size. So our new company commander had just returned from Vietnam. He had been at Khe Sanh. He'd been an artillery officer. He was part of the men trapped in Khe Sanh during the siege. His command post was in a shipping container buried under 10 feet of rubble. Today we would say he was suffering from PTSD. That wasn't invented in those days. So I was a favorite of the battalion commander for the things that I had done and did to help him. He called me over and said, "You need to be careful of this young captain. He's had a very stressful time. He just came off of home leave, and I don't think he's ready yet. So I want you to invent something for him to do that's going to be unstressful, but very busy." Court-martial.
Oh, this new person?
No. Part of the court-martial process is something called an Article 32 investigation. It's like a grand jury. What is the evidence in the case? Is there enough evidence to have a court-martial? Was there a crime, and is there a probability that this man committed it? And a senior officer is supposed to do that. We had a case that was really very simple. There was a crime. The young soldier admitted he had done it. The question was motive. Was it self-defense, or was it something else other than self-defense? And all of the elements were agreed to by both parties. The only question was motivation. He had a week to decide. And I thought that because the charges were so serious that he needed time to just think about the case.
Didn't he have an attorney? I mean, there were adjutant general.
Of course, but my officer was the officer conducting the investigation.
Was he an attorney?
No, of course not. Didn't need to be.
What, didn't this soldier have a right to have an attorney?
And he had an attorney. And the attorney had made his case, and the prosecuting
Was it a military
attorney.
or
I don't remember that detail. But the fact is, everything is put into a document and is presented to the officer who investigates the situation. And my captain was going to investigate the situation. But the only item that he had to investigate was make a decision on the motive. And I decided it would take him at least a week to completely review the file. At least a week. And to think about it. Even though he could do it in a couple of hours. And the best place to think about it, both sides, would probably be the golf course. And he looked at me.
Yeah.
And he said, "You have an ulterior motive, don't you, Walter?" Me? And I said, "All you need to do is just fill out the paperwork, sir." So he went off and he played golf for a week, came back, and he looked and acted much better. He was much happier, he was relaxed. And we typed up the findings and sent it in. And I got called over again to battalion headquarters to be counseled by the lieutenant colonel about how my commanding officer thought this was a inappropriate sort of thing to do. And then the colonel got a big smile that went from ear to ear and said, "Next time I have a problem like this, Captain, I'm calling on you to help me, bail me out."
Well, you were at Fort Dix for 2 years.
Yeah.
So tell us
More about
other
Dix?
incidents that you had. And did you make any friends, buddies that you kept in touch with or didn't keep in touch with?
Short time. Company D had lots of turnover of permanent party. We had the job of not only training soldiers basic training, but also training clerks who had finished clerk school and were sent to us for the final polishing to be a company clerk or a supply clerk. We were in brick barracks, permanent barracks, not barracks left over from World War I or World War II, which was nice. We had a semi-private room with our own shower. My bunkmate was from Manhattan, northern Manhattan, Harlem, to be exact. African American.
Well, the services were integrated by then.
Absolutely. And I'm a Jewish guy from...
completely integrated, not just
That's
the
right.
paper.
That's right. And I'm a Jewish guy from upstate. They give us a young clerk to be trained who, A, was from rural Mississippi, B, had never met an African American on a equal basis, let alone an African American supervising him. C, had never met a Jew. He really thought we had horns. And it was our job to train him.
You say our job. Who's the our?
My bunkmate and I. We weren't sure if he was going to be a supply clerk or if he was going to be a company clerk. We had to check his typing, check his arithmetic, give him duties that were appropriate, train him on how to obey appropriately, when to use his own initiative and when he could not. So we made sure that he kept our shower clean, our room clean, slept on the top bunk, and when we allowed him to take his first weekend pass, we took him to New York City.
How are you the person to make the decision whether he gets a weekend pass or not?
We were supervisors.
But not a rank that would,
Yeah.
you know?
I was, by that time, an E4. And my supply clerk was an E4. And this fellow was still a private. So we took him to New York. We told him where he could find a place to sleep that he could afford. We showed him places where he could go and places where he shouldn't go. Things he should see while in New York and things don't bother with.
Didn't you spend the time with him? The two of you. You said we took him, so what did you take him and leave him? Or stay with him?
Well, I went to visit some friends in the city by that time. My bunkmate, of course, had family in Harlem, and we put him at the YMCA. Several days later, he came to my bunkmate and said, whenever he peed, it burned. And my bunkmate kept a straight face and said he had to see me. The young man had to see me. And I listened to his story and said, well, you know, it really could be something very serious. You need to go on sick call today. He had VD.
Oh, yeah.
Just from that weekend in New York?
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't take much to
What,
get to.
okay. What I have trouble understanding is the Vietnam War was going on.
Yeah.
How did you not get sent there? You spent the 2 years in Fort Dix. I mean, that's a wonderful thing for you, but that's very unusual.
Fort Dix had a lot of turnover of people, including chaplains. Our prior Jewish chaplains had been either conservative or Orthodox. We now had classical reform chaplain, and he wasn't prepared to have a conservative or traditional Arab Shabbat service. The people who were permanent party at Fort Dix wanted to have something like that. Most of whom were doctors, more than a few lawyers, and other types of professionals. So I was the youngest, and it was my job to go to the captain, the rabbi, and say, what can you do about the situation? He said, well, nobody in Trenton or Philadelphia wants to come over to Dix to lead such a service. But if you want, we will have the books on a rack and you can lead it. So I did. Got to know a number of people. My first 6-7 months at Fort Dix were during winter time, fall time. And I managed to catch 2 different versions of pneumonia or upper respiratory infection or something of that sort. But they were 2 completely different versions. So the pulmonologist gave me a profile. The fact that he was Jewish and a member of our group at the
Shouldn't
chapel.
matter on his medical.
It should not matter. But he said, if you go to Vietnam vertically, you'll be coming back on that same plane a few hours later as a medical evacuation. And who am I to doubt a captain? So that may have been one of the reasons why. I had been on OCS hold for so long. As I said, I only had 14 or 15 months left to go. The normal tour in Vietnam was for 12 months or 13 months at that time, which meant that go, do the minimum, and then you're on your way back for processing out.
And when were you processed out?
Company clerks have an interesting life because they know the rules and regulations and processes. When you start the processing out procedures, the company has to put in the order to replace you. You have 2 weeks to process out. By that time, I had already been accepted to finish my college education at American University here in Washington.
Did you use the GI Bill to do
Yes. Classes were to begin, as I vaguely remember, something like August 1st or 2nd. And my last day in the Army was August 7th. So I had processed out. And instead of wasting my time in the barracks, I came to Washington.
that? You were allowed to leave earlier? I mean, to leave the base?
I'm saying what I did. I'm not saying whether I was allowed or not. And I started school.
Again, you'd be in for another 2 years.
So anyway, I started college at American University with a major of public administration, political science. And I came back for my last 2 days at Dix to finish the out processing, to get the discharge, say goodbye to the guys, and to move. And by that time, I was already married.
How did you meet your wife during all this time?
She was ahead of me in line at the Port Authority bus terminal to catch a bus to Rochester, New York. She was applying for a job at the Strong Memorial Hospital in Rochester.
Is this when you were already in the service or
Yes.
getting out?
No, I was still in.
Yeah.
And because her interview was on a Monday, I sort of hijacked her and her mother. And with my mother, we showed them Niagara Falls and a bit of Rochester, and had a very good time meeting this young lady who became my first wife.
And she stayed in Rochester, but you had to leave.
Well, she went back to New York the following week to finish college, to get her degree in pharmacy, and then to move to Rochester. And of course, my family helped find her a place that would be convenient to the hospital. And we were married for 13 years, produced 3 children. She became very ill, and it became obvious to her doctors and to me that the major cause of her illness was me.
Good doctor.
But because of her illness, I became the custodial parent, the full-time custodial parent of the 3 boys. I was an adequate father, a lousy mother, as I'm constantly reminded. My divorce attorney was extremely unhappy with a woman I was dating. She thought it was very inappropriate.
To be dating while you're going through a divorce.
Well, to be dating this particular woman.
Oh.
We had been separated for a year. And this woman was a nurse. She knew how to take care of children. She knew how to take care of me. She was not Jewish. She had never had children. And she wanted children of her own. Mm-hmm. But the fact that she wasn't Jewish upset my divorce attorney.
It's not his business.
Her business.
Not her business.
You're probably right. But considering how much stress we put my attorney through with regard to my estranged wife, with visits to this hospital and that hospital and everything else related, emergency calls at 2 o'clock in the morning to my attorney, what do I do now sort of situation. Visits from Montgomery County Police because she said, my future
Well,
ex.
let's not litigate it all over again on this tape. So
anyway,
so you wound up divorced, then you remarried.
My divorce attorney wanted me to go out with a friend of hers, just once, to see what a decent woman was like. And we had 2 dates. That was it.
Oh, so you did not marry that other woman.
No, I
that's the
dated
same
the
person?
friend of the attorney
That
instead.
is funny. Okay, tell us about your work history.
After finishing school in December '69 at American University, I went to Rochester, New York, where I was employed by the bus company, Regional Transit Service. I invented some new kinds of public transportation using buses in Rochester. They were very successful. After being there for 4 years, I was looking for another job. Happened an opportunity at the Montgomery County Planning Office for the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission as a transit planner. So moved down here in January 1974. Worked for Park and Planning for 4.5 years, where I was the advisor to Montgomery County Council staff and Montgomery County councilmen on issues related to Metro.
Are you involved with that park and ride and kiss and ride?
Yes. I was also involved in noticing that we had these 2 branches of subway in Montgomery County, and yet nothing going east-west. So I did a study of a railroad right-of-way that existed, that was still being used, and we called the study the Lower Montgomery Cross-County Transferway Concept Feasibility Study.
Is that what's being built now?
It's called
All
the
these-
Purple Line.
Yeah.
In Kensington?
Yep. And
So
Silver
how many
Spring,
years ago was that it's now being built? When did you study it?
1976.
And this is 2019 and it's still being built. I mean, it's in the process of being built.
Yeah, yeah. The study showed that there was huge demand for it. Our right-of-way is the one that's being used all the way to Silver Spring. Silver Spring to Bethesda, but we wanted it to continue all the way across the county to River Road, then into the district along the right-of-way, into Georgetown. And then perhaps even a bridge across the Potomac, parallel to or under the Key Bridge to Roslyn. And it would have had, we didn't choose the technology. Technology could have been electric buses, or it could be light rail. My preference was light rail because it's so quiet.
Yes.
The study evolved, and it's the Purple Line.
And how long did you stay there? And then what was your next job?
4.5 years at Park and Planning. We did a lot of work on what is now the Montgomery division of Metro's bus garage. We did a complete restructuring of the bus system when Metro Rail came to Silver Spring, where we took all of the routes and decided on one day we're going to renumber all the routes going into Silver Spring, change the schedules, and do everything. So there'd be one day of massive disruption, but thereafter, no incremental stuff. And there was massive disruption. But you come into work, whatever bus is there, you're going to take. It's going home that the problem would exist. So we flooded the Silver Spring station with humans to provide human contact. Sure, there's maps there. We would take you to the map and show you which bus to take, what your choices were. That got me a lot more interested in other parts of Metro. In June of '78, I went to work for the Transit Authority. And for the next 25 years, it was various kinds of financial management positions at Metro. My last job at Metro, the title was Departmental Budget Officer. The job was essentially the financial manager of the construction program, and closeout manager, and senior utilities engineer, and other duties as assigned.
And when did you ultimately retire from that?
June of 2002.
And then what did you do?
My wife and I went on a wonderful trip. We're going to take the railroad from San Diego, California to Vancouver, British Columbia, and then from Vancouver to Toronto. We took 3 grandsons with us. I did not leave any forwarding phone numbers with anybody. I was retired.
And how many grandchildren do you have again for the camera? Let's say the number again.
Well, those back in 2002.
No, I mean now.
Now it's 22.
That's fantastic.
So we took three boys. And as I said, I didn't leave a forwarding phone number. The deputy chief of Metro Transit Police called and apologized for not attending my retirement party. But he said it didn't matter because I wasn't going to be retired too long. He wanted me back working for him on a budget for Metro Transit Police. In my 25 years at Metro, it had become practice for me to train the budget officer for transit police whenever there was a change. And they assumed that I would do it. But when I retired, whoops. In addition, that was after 2001. 9/11, 2001 was a wake-up call to the United States and to transit agencies. The FBI warned senior officials at Metro that transit is a primary target. You need to increase your sworn officer staff. Budgeting had been an add-on duty because it wasn't very much money when you look at Metro overall. So transit police went from 150 sworn officers to 300 sworn officers in a period of about 3 years. Now they needed to have somebody working on budget. So they brought me in to work part-time, and I did that for a year and a half. I also showed them where they could get additional grant money from Department of Justice and Department of Homeland Security and other agencies, as well as additional training for free from other federal agencies. Retired again. I spent a year and a half at home, got a new hip, became bored, would sleep until noon. My wife said, "You're coming to work with me." So I became her office manager. I was just supposed to answer the telephone.
What kind of business was that?
CPA. Real estate management firm. She was the chief accounting officer.